guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're going to be making a wooden plane. Now when I say wooden plane, I don't mean wooden plane, I mean wooden plane. And what I've done is I've picked up one of these wooden plane hardware kits from Lee Valley, and I thought it might be fun to go through with you guys the process of making one of these, and then you can make your decision and decide whether or not you feel that you want to pick one of these up or it's a worthwhile venture for you or not. So I'm not sure. Why don't we start with opening up the kit and let's see what we get inside. Well, we're just waiting for the heat to come up in the shop so that we can run some equipment. So it's a good opportunity really to go through this and see what it is that we've got inside here. We have the blade. Now I went with the A2 blade for this particular kit. So it looks like we've got the blade, we've got a set of instructions, and we've got certain things like the blade adjustment. Looks like a brass retaining pin. You know, looks like a complete set of hardware, but of course we don't have the wood. So I'm going to grab some wood off the rack, and we'll start out with, I guess, laminating some wood together. Well, the first thing that you need to do is select the type of wood that you want to use for your plane. You want a close grain hardwood. Maple is preferred. However, if you want to use walnut, cherry, that works as well. I'm going for a little bit of wow factor in mine, and I've got myself some curly maple here. And what I've done is, these blanks are just rough cut, and I've done them 12 inches long by, this is an 8/4 rough cut board, and I've ripped them at 3 inches wide. The first step that we're going to do in preparing the blank for the body is I'm going to take these over to the jointer, and I'm going to get myself a flat bottom and a perfectly perpendicular at 90 degrees perpendicular edge for reference, so that we can mill these down to their final dimension. Okay, a couple things I'd like to point out. Number one, if you're going to use figured stock, remember that the more figure you use, the more susceptible it is to tear out. And I had great success on the face planing at the jointer, but on the perpendicular edge planing there was some tear out. But I'm not too concerned about it because I did end up with a perfectly flat surface with some tear out. That's 90 degrees. So I'm going to be able to clean that up at the table saw, hence why I left it a little bigger than we need at 3 inches wide. The other thing I'd like to point out is you have to remember here that we're making a plane. So be sure that all your cuts are double checked for squareness and for flatness and for, of course, accuracy. Before you do a cut, check your table saw blade to make sure that it's square to your table. Before running something through a jointer, ensure that your fence is square to the bed, both in feed and out feed. I know that sounds strange, but I have seen it where the in feed is out from the out feed, and that's just because of table bed adjustment. Either way, now it's time to take those pieces over to the table saw. We're just going to work on the core body piece at this point in time. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the table saw and a ripping blade to cut it down to 1 11/16 wide and 2.5 inches thick. like I said earlier, being square on all of this project is imperative at this point. So you just want to double check. Make sure that all your edges are square to each other, and don't just check at one point. Check all the way along the board, just to make sure that everything is square and true. So this is our core piece, and I'm not going to be concerned about the length just yet, because I want to cut a couple more pieces out of this other piece of stock that we milled. Now this will still have the same height of 2.5 inches, but we need two pieces 5/16 of an inch thick, and that will be our side walls for our plane. So you don't need a video of it. I'm going to shoot over to the table saw and rip off 2 strips at 5/16 of an inch thick. And there we have our 3 main pieces of the body with these 5/16 of an inch thick pieces. They will be our sides of the plane. We still have quite a bit of work to do on these, but what we're going to do is take this over to the table saw, and we're going to square off the ends of these blanks. Again, I stress the importance of making sure that your equipment is set up correctly. But we're going to square off both ends. This is actually too long. I have this at 12 inches. We're going to need a blank of about 8, but I don't want to trim it just yet. So let's square up the ends, and then we're going to put these side pieces off to the side, and we're going to start laying out the center core of our plane. Well, now it's time to mark out our core of the plane, and this is our block here, 1 11/16 inch wide or thick, and it's 2.5, and the length here is 12 inches, but we're going to chop that down. What you want to do to start off with is we want to mark the throat or the mouth of the plane. And for that, you're going to mark in, pick which side you want to be the front of the plane, and mark in 3 inches from the end of the plane, and just draw yourself a line there from top to bottom of your body. Just like that. Now this line here is going to be the mouth of our plane, where our blade will protrude through. From there, get yourself a 45 square and mark from the bottom edge of that line. You want to mark a 45 right up to the top. Just like that. And just to make it a little more clear, I'm going to just clarify this this mark here at 3 inches, just so you can see it better on film. The next thing that you want to mark is on the front end or the nose of the plane. Right there at your 3-inch mark, you want to place a horizontal line at 1/4 inch. And from there, we need to place a radius now from the 1/4 inch mark here up to the top, and this will be a 4-inch radius. So whether you have to make a template or use your compass and draw out a 4-inch circle and then cut it out, whatever you want to do, you need a 4-inch circle radius right along here, starting at this 3-inch line and this 1/4 inch line, right where they intersect. One thing I forgot to mention is where the top intersecting line of this 4-inch radius arc will be, and it will be at 1.5 inches in from our 3-inch mouth mark here. So I've taken a junk piece of pine and I've marked out and cut a 4-inch radius curve here on this, and we're just going to line it up with the intersecting lines at the 3-inch and 1/4 inch down here at the bottom, and this line at 1.5 inches. And once we get it all lined up the way that we like it, we're going to mark that 4-inch radius curve, just like that. So hopefully you can see that on camera. I'll just tilt it up a bit, maybe give you a better view. That's a much better view of it right there. So these are the beginning markings of our plane. And from now, we can carry on to the next step. Well, the next step that we're going to partake in is we're going to run this over here to the table saw, and using our miter fence, we're going to cut this 3-inch line here first. Once we get this nose part or the front end of our plane separated, we'll cut this 45, and from there we can move on to getting this curved line cut. You have several options for that. Bandsaw would be one, of course, as well as you can just sand it down. But whatever you do, whatever method you use, please make sure that you're being square to the edges, because this 45 cut here is going to end up being the plane bed. So you really want a nice flat, clean surface for that plane blade to sit on. And there we have the pieces for the core of our planer. Pretty swanky, eh? So now it's time to drill for some hardware. So this nose piece, just put this aside for now, and we're going to take this particular piece, clamp it into the front vise of the bench, and start doing some layout lines for drilling for some hardware on this particular part. Well, here we have our piece in the vise. This is our chiseled point of our 45-degree cut. And the first step that we want to do is we want to draw a center line right down the middle of this. And that will be at 27/32. If you remember, this was 1 11/16 thick. So 27/32 is the center of that. And I'm going to draw it from both sides just to confirm the measurement. Right there, 27/32. Now, if it's not exact, and I can see it's just ever so slightly off, I can draw a line or punch in the center between those two lines to make it so that I get the exact center. Now, this particular plane kit uses a Norris style adjuster as opposed to the normal wooden planes, which use a wedge for blade adjustment. The Norris style is a lot more convenient and a lot easier to adjust. So we need to drill a couple holes in order to accommodate some of the hardware. So on that center line, starting from the bottom of our point here, we're just going to measure up and place a mark at 2.5 and 3 3/8 of an inch. So one at 2.5 and one at 3 3/8. And for those particular holes now, I'm going to center punch those so that our bit, when we're drilling, will not, deviate away from our center. So let's give those a little bit of a center punch. Well, we're going to start off with our top hole here. And what we're going to drill here is with a Forstner bit, we're going to drill a 7/8 of an inch diameter hole, and we want it to be 21/32 deep. Now, I know that seems, I guess it seems a little technical and a little precise, but this hole is going to end up housing the adjuster cup for our blades. So you really want it to sit flush when all this is said and done. So 30 seconds deep minimum, but try to get it as close as you can. Don't make it less than that. Well, I've said it many, many times on the show that there are multiple ways to do certain procedures. And although I have an adjusting drill press table that I could easily set at 45 degrees to make this level, I just want to show you that by using the offcut that you trimmed, you can clamp it to the base of here and make it so that this now becomes parallel to your drill press table. And at this top hole here, we're now going to drill that 7/8 diameter Forstner bit hole 21-30 seconds deep. Now I have my calipers set at 21-30 seconds and I have the depth gauge set so I can keep checking it. Try not to go too deep. Just take your time and check frequently and it'll work out just fine. And there we have it at 21-30 seconds. And now that we have that part drilled, we need to drill one more hole down through the center of here. Well, I've removed the Forstner bit and I've installed a 9/64 diameter drill bit into the chuck, and I've taped it off at 3/4 of an inch depth. And I'm just going to drill a pilot hole right in the center of that hole that we just drilled. And that's going to be for the mounting screw that's going to hold this cup in place. The next step that you want to do is put your 7/8 Forstner bit back into your chuck, and at that 2.5 inch mark that we placed on our center blank, we want to drill this 7/8 of an inch diameter Forstner bit hole 3/8 of an inch deep. With the two holes drilled, we now want to use a sharp chisel. We're going to scribe the line here to join the two holes together, and we're going to chisel away this excess material here until this area is flush with that 3/8 of an inch deep hole. So with some careful hand chiseling here, you should have something that looks just like this. And you can test it by taking your adjuster cap and sitting it in that 7/8 inch hole, and it should sit flush here. If it doesn't, you're going to need to make some adjustments. Well, now that we have this done, it's time to take that cap out of there for now, and we're going to glue the body together. Well, I've said it before that the key to every successful glue up is preparation. And we've got a nice flat board here with some wax paper to prevent anything from sticking to the board. We have some Q-tips to clean up some squeeze out. We have water, of course, for the same reason. And we have our glue. I'm just going to run through a dry process of the glue up here for you. And what we're going to do is I'm going to apply wood glue only to this back piece that we just finished working on. We're going to completely cover both of these sides with wood glue, and with our front piece just in place, we're going to bring these sides up and clamp this securely together. We want to make sure that we get good alignment on the bottom so that we're getting a nice flat surface along the bottom with which we're going to be working with when we use the plane. And once we get all the squeeze up or the squeeze out cleaned up, then we're going to do the adjustment on this piece. And what we're going to do essentially is place our blade on the blade bed right here on this 45, and we're going to get glue applied onto our front piece here and slide this piece up until it just touches the tip of the blade. And of course the blade will be beveled down. Once that touches the tip or the point of the blade, then we're going to clamp everything together so that the assembly will be glued together like this. Well, here we go on the glue up process. I only really get one shot at this here, so hopefully everything's going to go all right. You don't want to go too heavy on the glue, but like I said, preparation is important in that you want to make sure you've got all your ducks in a row and you're ready for squeeze out and you're ready for clamping. It's not rocket science here for a glue up of this size, and you shouldn't need a helper, but either way, I'm going to try to get this done as quickly as possible, just so that it's not a 10-minute video of a glue up that you probably really don't need. So there we go. There's one side with the glue on it. We're being a little stingy on the glue, not a lot. We're still getting really good coverage, but we want to try to avoid a lot of squeeze out, especially in the plane bed area. So now that we have both of those sides coated, we're going to sit it down on our wax paper and place our sides in place, just like this. Now it's okay to go ahead and put a little bit of glue on this side here as well, and this is where time is going to be working against you, because this glue is going to be trying to set up. So you want to try to be as quick as you can here with this particular step. So we're going to get this glue spread around, remembering that we have to adjust this front piece as once it gets in place. So there we go. We got the glue all spread. We're just going to sit it in place here in the front. We know roughly where it goes, but not really. And now we're going to clamp the back end of this particular piece. Now I said about having setup, and here it is. I don't even have the clamp ready to go. So I don't know how that happened. Anxious to film, I guess. So give that back piece a little clamp on there. And now, once we get this back piece completely clamped on where we'd want it, and we're going to add more clamps after. Once we get it clamped on, as I said in the previous segment, we're going to sit this blade bevel down onto the blade bed and slide our other piece up tight to that blade. And once we get that slid in place, well, now we know the front end is adjusted, and we can go ahead and slap a few clamps on the front end of this. So just double check it to make sure it looks good, and we're going to give it a little bit of a clamp there. Just like that. So go ahead and finish clamping yours up, and then come back and see me. And unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this week. I wasn't counting on this being a two-part build, and apparently it's a little more extensive of a project than what I initially had thought. No big deal. Got nothing but time, so why not turn it into a two-part and keep as much information in the show as we can. So guys, Thanks for watching this week. I hope you're going to join me next week when I bring you part 2 of this build and yet another woodworking video. See you next week, guys.